Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I'm Steve R. Patterson. Today, I'm going to give a quick update on what it's like having a transplant, a liver transplant, and also being a U.S. expat, and what a particular challenge I have right now in my 6th year of being a liver transplant survivor, and then 5 years living outside the United States. The first thing you might wonder is there's lots of other things, but one of the most basic is the meds. How do I keep my meds? Because certain meds, like say tacrolimus and mycophenolate, which are the two immunosuppressants that I take, they're also called Corograph and Silsef, other names of them. There's others that are similar to those, so you might have one. I know that my brother Troy, who's on this, and the Genetics Transplant Brothers playlist. We both have a liver transplant. I know he has a different kind. I don't remember what his is called, but anyway. So there's that, and then there's some other medications. Like for instance, I had my gallbladder removed, so I had to have I have to Vertisol, I believe is how you say it, that loosens the bile in my liver since it doesn't have that place to go sit. Sit into the gallbladder until it goes into the liver when you eat. That's where the bile goes in. Since that reservoir isn't there, it all stays in the liver, and the chances of building up and becoming a bile stone, which I actually had. I have that in an earlier video when I was talking about transplant itself. But anyway, these kinds of medications and other ones, some of them I can get locally. I get my high blood pressure medication here locally. I get gabapentin here locally, which is for the peripheral neuropathy that I have. Anyway, getting lost in the weeds on all this. But so one of the challenges is how do I get enough of those meds here when I go back? So what I do is I typically go back to the United States twice a year, once in the summer and then right here coming up at Christmas time. And since the VA will ship 3 months at a time of meds, I have them sent to my daughter. And then so she brings 6 months of them to meet me when I meet her for Christmas time. And then in the summer, I'm at the town she's at. So I pick them up. So I bring back 6 months worth of meds. I have a whole bag just for meds. And no, I have never once even had to show any paperwork. I was frankly pretty surprised. I mean, it looks like a freaking pharmacy. How many bottles and things are in there, especially when you're looking at it might only be 8 medications, but if you have 5 or 6 bottles of each one, and so anyway, that's a thing that I have to do. Okay. Now I'm not going to talk about some of the other stuff. I'm just going to talk about my particular situation here that's kind of unique. I would imagine there's probably not a lot of liver transplant survivors that are US expats living in Colombia right now, with Colombia right next door to Venezuela, where we have all this action going on off the coast. And so something that we get as expats, we get these STEP reminders, and STEP is something the State Department message or something. I'm going to share this message. This is the email that I got talking about this. Hold on a minute. It was there. It is right here. Sorry. So here, you can see it now, I hope. Yeah. So this is, I'll read it. I'm going to slide it over here so it's a little easier for me to read. Sorry for all this, folks. It's free, right? Like, comment, subscribe. It is free. I mean, all right. So this is issued December 3rd. I got it, I guess. Yeah, I got it this morning. So do not travel, remain in Venezuela due to high risk of wrongful detention. The reason I'm getting this is because we're right next to Venezuela. It's kind of fringe involved in a way just because the name keeps coming up. And we do have Colombia mentioned later in this email. Do not remain in Venezuela due to high risk of wrongful death, torture, or detention, terrorism, kidnapping, arbitrary enforcement of local laws, crime, civil unrest, poor health infrastructure. All U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents in Venezuela are strongly advised to get the hell out. So basically, here's a rundown of what happened, since 2019 when the U.S. Embassy closed, and it's been slowly going downhill since then. And here's some examples of these horrible things that can happen. And this is not an overstatement. I mean, Venezuela is truly a risky place to go just because the people are so desperate. I mean, people are just out of everything. So, I mean, it's a weird dynamic of, got to eat type of attitude. And I'm not sympathizing with that. Certainly wrong is wrong. But I mean, it's you could very well find yourself in a bad situation very quickly there. So here's a part that's interesting. Colombian terrorist group operate in Venezuela borders with Colombia, Brazil. And what they're talking about here is the FARC and the ELN. Mostly the FARC. The FARC has been along the border. There's been fighting going on there constantly since the so-called peace deal in 2016 when they laid down their weapons, right? And so they've been resurgent lately. I had a video where I went over to Tolima last weekend, and that was former FARC controlled country. And I talk about that in that video. You can see it. If you click on the playlist, just Steve, I think just me, those kind of videos are in there where this will be. So anyway, that's a very real possibility too that you could run into anything from, in fact, just south of here in Valle de Cauca, which is where Cali is. I live in the coffee region. I'm in Quindío right now, and the next department or state down is Valle de Cauca, and so that's Medellin. North of us is Antioquia, but that's a little bit away. There's another department, Manizales, is in Caldas. So you have to put anyway. Too much geography. But in Valle de Cauca, they do have warnings of like FARC roadside stop. So I mean, if you think about it, I'm not saying this happens in Colombia, and I know we're talking about Brazil, but even in Colombia, up until a few years ago, and theoretically to this day, you could be driving down some of these country roads, and you could run into a roadblock of the FARC, which are leftist guerrillas that have been fighting since the '60s. You could run into ELN, which is a similar outfit to that. You could run into what's called the paramilitaries, or sort of like the conservative faction against them. And of course, all three of these are wrapped up in the narco world because they all claim all these political ideals, but they're making money. And the so-called socialist or so-called conservative, whatever, who cares? They're still bad guys in that sense. Or it could be the policia, which is a national thing here. There's no such thing as a city cop. It's all Colombia police. Or it could be the military. So I mean, that's a lot that you could just randomly run into. So they're not kidding. And that's safety in Colombia. Just multiply that by a zillion when you go over across the border. So here's more about all this. You could Google it and find it. You could probably go to the State Department website and read this thing. But the reason that I wanted to show you that is because in my situation where it could become problematic is Petro, the president of Colombia, and Donald Trump, who just love having little Twitter fights. I don't know. I mean, you know how this thing is going. What if it get really sideways really fast? U.S. closed down Venezuelan airspace. I'm not saying they're ever going to close down Colombian airspace or war with Colombia or like that. I don't think that's possible. It's the oldest, longest running ally of the United States in all of Latin America. When Colombia was formed, they sent their people to Washington, D.C., and there they formed their constitution, basically identical to ours. The original name of Colombia was, once it became a country, the United States of Colombia. That only lasted a very brief time, maybe any weeks or months, but then it became the Republic of Colombia as it is today. And then prior to that, it was all Gran Colombia when it included Panama, Ecuador, Venezuela. And so, little history lesson there. Anyway, it theoretically could get weird as far as flights. I never know. So what happens if suddenly, things get dicey? I mean, so there's a chance, as far as transplant meds go, theoretically, that we could have some issue with the airlines. But on top of that, that got me thinking. I wanted to go check because it usually takes about a week to send my meds. I wanted to go over to the Veterans Administration website to reorder my meds, and look what happened. They closed the traditional My Health Vet that veterans use, is where we get all of our, excuse me, I'm looking for how to do this without messing it up while I'm talking. That's where we used to do everything, set appointments, get our meds refilled and all that. So I went over there today to get my meds refilled. And after having to go to a whole new website and read all this stuff, I found this refill prescriptions that used to say all the meds that I have below it. Now it says this. So I had to send an email to the VA and say, hey man, transplant meds. I mean, this is where I get them. I mean, I can buy some of this stuff locally, but I'm not going to buy tacrolimus and Silsef and things like that off a counter down here in a pharmacy or a drogeria. I probably could, but I'm sure it's going to get fixed. But I mean, that's daunting. So the risk taker here that decided a year after transplant to say, F it, I'm leaving the United States, which is something I said I was going to do the whole time I was sick. It was part of my whole mythos of, I'm going to live through this and I'm going to move to Iceland. That was my thing. I was going to move to Iceland. I had this whole idyllic. But then pandemic hit right after, because 2019 and 2020, January 2020, when all that started up, I was like, you got to be kidding me. I went through 10 years and lived through all that just for this crap. Bye-bye. And so that's why I left. And really the only reason I came to Colombia is because it was the first country that was open. And that's how it happened. And I didn't intend to stay, but here I am. I haven't been getting my blood tests like I'm supposed to. I get them taken twice a year. They have not changed my meds since the day I left the United States. I still get the exact same. I still take the exact same meds. Nothing has changed. They've never told me to change everything. My blood comes back fine. I go in the sun. I'm not supposed to. I don't swim in rivers and things like they say not to. I do swim in the ocean, but I lived in Cozumel for almost a full year in 2022. I was in the ocean almost every day. I was snorkeling like a madman. That was awesome. That was great. Years of your life, you wish you could just, hey, I'll just do that again. Okay, give me 10. Or I was there for almost 12 months. Yeah, 11 and a half months. My wife and I were there. We got married there, and so at any rate, so that's a transplant update for transplant people out there. I know there's not a lot of information that maybe and nothing probably impacts you, but it's a transplant story. And I mean, we're all out here doing it. If you're one of us, it's survivor. Keep going. Certainly, nothing I'm saying is anything close to medical advice. Okay, regardless, um, that is for everybody to do. Is it safe to travel? I don't know. I did it. Is it safe for everybody to travel? I don't know. It depends. I mean, for me, I really never got sick in my whole life until I knocked it out of the park. I actually got an award in like seventh grade for not missing a single day of school. And, and then and then all of a sudden, boom, a cascade of you got to be kidding me happened, and then I missed a decade of my life. Take care of yourself. If you're pre-transplant, keep going, keep going. It's a bit of a road still, but it's very doable. And afterwards, it's not doom and gloom. Look at my brother and I. I mean, I'm not saying we're definitely not examples in a lot of things, but we are examples of surviving a liver transplant and getting back to having a normal life. And so that's possible for you too. I'll talk more about this stuff in other transplant videos, but we've been putting all this Gen X stuff out as far as all that. And I want to make sure that I keep this a part of what I'm doing here because I want to expand upon this as we go for my fellow transplant survivors, transplant families, all of it, the donors, families of donors. Talk about gold star families. I know, a little different, but still. I guess I could say that I'm a veteran. Okay, folks, if you have anything to say about this, please post it below. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear what's going on with you. I mean, I'm just fascinated by this. I never talked to a transplant survivor except Troy. It's just, I wonder what's going on with them. How's their life? How's their neuropathy? Are they up at night with cramps? Did they have any other lingering things? Did they do something like me, all of a sudden go crazy and start doing long 72-hour fasts on a regular basis and living outside the United States? Kind of an extreme. But I've seen guys, parachuting and all this stuff. I used to do that. I don't know if I'd do it nowadays. I think my bones might break on impact, but I'm going to stop babbling. I will babble forever if I have to help you out there stay motivated if you're waiting for your transplant. Stick with it. It is entirely possible. And remember, everything that might hurt along the way, that is how it feels to heal. Okay? That is how it feels to heal. None of this is against you. This is all making you better somehow. It doesn't make sense now, but in the end, it will. Okay? So, with that, take care. Happy early holidays. Take it easy, man.